Are you in? Are you in? Okay. 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 Yeah, I have my boss call me. I'll call you later. Bye-bye. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
How you doing this
I'm
afternoon?
doing well. How are you?
Ah, busy, 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 as you can imagine. Yeah, but thank you for being here.
No, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, going to get right into it, Nayo. Just be respectful of your time and all of that. But thank you for once again. I basically stayed in touch with you since we met at NABJ in Birmingham last summer. So definitely glad we've stayed connected. And I absolutely love what you're doing with the jazz. I certainly follow your content every every day almost practically, and it's
Oh,
very engaging and very compelling stuff. You're doing a good thing, so I'm
okay.
proud to see it.
Thank you. I'll just give you a heads up. So my name is pronounced like Cinco de Mayo, so it's Nayo,
Oh,
like Cinco de
Niall,
Mayo.
thank you, Niall. My
No, no
apologies.
problem. Probably
Got it.
some edges, like my little piece of hair. Okay, we're good.
All right, Niall, we're gonna get it right on to it. So thank you everyone for joining another edition of Queen's Court Conversations. This is our one-to-ones edition, and we have a great special guest here by the name of Miss Nayo Campbell. So thank you for being here, Miss Nayo. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. It's a little gloomy here in Salt Lake City, Utah, but other than that, the weather's warming up. So, you get happier. I get happier when the weather starts acting
Same here. Same here. So tell us about yourself. Where you're from and all. I know you're from the DC area, the DMV area, but just tell us a little more.
Yeah, so I'm originally from PG County, Maryland, born and raised in PG County, attended Howard University where I got my degree in journalism back
Cool.
in 2018. But yeah, I grew up in the DMV, spent a majority of my life in the DMV until I was 23 and got my first kind of full-time big girl job, my dream job. And I'm doing that with the Jazz. I'm a digital reporter for the Jazz. So I'm out here in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah, as I was saying, Niall, that I definitely love your work that you're doing and everything. It's certainly compelling content and great content that you put on almost a regular daily basis and such. So you keep doing what you're doing with them, and I love to see it. And hopefully you keep growing and evolving for sure. So my first question is Niall, what are you passionate about? Basically, what drives you to create good content every night, and what really just fuels you every single day?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's always like humanizing. I'm a big, I would say my beat, I guess you would say, is human interest. I love telling the stories of people. I love finding stories that maybe the world doesn't really know, and I love uncovering them and being able to bring those to life. I like love. I work in sports, or I work with basketball because I grew up watching basketball and just enjoying the game and loving the game. Never played it, but just enjoyed watching it. It was like just, something that you would do with your family. But I always wondered, like, what are these guys like off the court? Like you see them sign autographs and you see all this great stuff that they do in the community and you see the things on social media. But for me, it's like one that like something that just like makes me excited as a journalist or as a person that's passionate about what they do is the journey of how to get to where you are. It's less than 1% chance that you can make it into the NBA. We talk about the guys that play college basketball. I believe it's like, I think that's like 1.5. It's like a crazy percentage number where it's like under 5%, under like 2%.
Yeah.
I have those stats written somewhere else, but still, it's like a 1.5% chance that you can like get into the league. And so it's like, what did it take to get there? There's so many parts, so many things that happen in life, whether it be injuries, whether it be just you didn't train with the right person, or just like little things like that could lead to you not getting there. Like, what did it take to get to that 1%? But for me, it's also like finding the human outside of them. So that's always something I'm passionate about, even when I do entertainment, which is also where I got my start, was entertainment. So doing entertainment and sports, I'm always trying to ask questions that really showcase people who they are and how they got to where they are.
Got it. That sounds good. So, how did you end up with the jazz? Anyway, if you could just provide us a little deep dive into that story. What led you there?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because I was working with the Wizards. I worked with the Wizards for 3 seasons up until COVID happened in March, and then of course COVID happened, so the season, so the NBA season was suspended, and yeah, so COVID happened. I was like reaching out to NBA teams because I had made the decision of what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work mostly on the digital side because I felt like digital allowed me to work with broadcast, work with radio, and allow me to kind of just do a little bit of everything. And so I knew I wanted to work on digital. I knew I wanted to work closely with our social media team. And I was like, okay, like I want to be a digital reporter for a team. So that will allow me to be able to tell these stories and actually like work specifically for a team so that I can build these relationships. And so I kind of was just like talking to different NBA teams and like giving them this pitch and telling them what I wanted to do. And from there, I like just, ended up talking with over probably all 30 teams, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like I've talked to probably every NBA team and just reaching
Oh
out
wow,
like via LinkedIn. And then I reached out to the Jazz, got into a conversation, and then just kind of like started working from there. Gave them the pitch of like what I would want to do if I was to join their team. And it went really quick. I got the job. I think I started talking to them in like July and was offered the job by like August, by
that's
Labor Day
great.
weekend.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I gotta ask, what is it like living in Utah, basically Salt Lake City, as an African American woman? What's your experience been there? Has
Um,
it been all positive? Has it been a mix?
I mean, it's Utah for sure. I think it's very different than DC. So DC, it's almost like polar opposites in DC in many ways. DC is known as Chocolate City. Utah's known as Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like Utah. It's 1%. It's I believe 2% black in the state. So it's very different. It is there are groups of community there here in Utah, of the black community where you see a black person and immediately it's like you give that extra like head nod because it's like, yo, like we're here this together. And so that's like really cool to kind of have that sense of community, to know that like I remember like there was an event that I was getting honored at, and like a whole bunch of women came to the event and they're just like, we're a fan of your work. A whole bunch of black women came to the event, we're a fan of your work. We just want to know that you're celebrated and supported here. And I definitely feel that with the community. The Utah Jazz in general, like our jazz fans are so supportive. They were excited when I came out here. I think when it comes to the players have been a great part of my job because it's just like we have that understanding because as you know, like the NBA is made up of majority black players. And so we kind of have an understanding when black people come to town, when black families, all of that. So it's just kind of like that sense of community that you immediately feel, which I think is unique. I remember when I first moved out here, like I announced that I got the job. Our star players on the team at the time, Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, both retweeted and like liked my Twitter post. And so you got that like instant support because they just understand. And so it is very different. It's the opposite of Washington D.C.
For sure, definitely. I'm just reflecting back on your journey just so far and everything that you've done with the Jazz up to this point. What has been the biggest professional accomplishment thus far up to this point, and how do you think it has shaped, or did it shape your career trajectory? And where do you see yourself going forward as well?
Bless me.
Bless you.
Sorry. I mean, so it's interesting because I could say the Emmy nominations, like that's definitely a professional. That was a goal of mine. It was a story that was very near and dear to my heart. So I would say the Emmy nominations, like of course I could say that. I could say All-Star Weekend. I got to host the NBA All-Star game and I got to host the NBA All-Star practice. I got to host the NBA HBCU game. But I think for me, like any of the times where there was a conversation that we had last season where I was able to get Mike Conley, Rudy Gay, Ochai Agbaji, and Colin Sexton to sit down during Black History Month and talk about the experience, both being a public figure as a basketball player and also just being a Black man in America. And we got to sit down and just have like a really real conversation with soul food on the table to have dinner and just talked about what that experience of that was like. What was it like getting the support of the community? What is that standard that you're held to? Why is it different? And that was something that I felt like is a very rare experience. Like Rudy Gay and Mike Conley were both born in the 80s, and you got Ochai Baji and Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton's born in 1999. Ochai is born in 2001. And so you're having these very vast different experiences. Rudy Gay being from Baltimore, Colin being from Atlanta, Ochai being from Kansas, and Mike Conley being from Indiana. So it's just all very different experiences. And I think for me, professionally, like having that hour-long conversation and keeping basketball players engaged for an entire hour was just something where I was like, I did that. And I'm so excited and so honored to have been able to have that conversation. But I also would say like any of my back home series that I do with the players where I'm able to like go back to their hometown and tell their stories, like that's the heart of what I want to do. And that's the heart of the storytelling that I want to do. And so I would definitely say those are probably my favorite accomplishments. I think anytime where I'm able to just to have any real conversations and be the interviewer, that's what I know I'm good at. And that's what fuels me. And so it's just, that never gets old.
Yeah, and basically, in your experience, what challenges have you faced in your field so far, just over out there with the Jazz or previously, and what strategies have you used to overcome them?
I mean, I think as a Black woman in any of the in any industries, it's not easy. It's tough. Oftentimes we have to, for us, I feel like as talent in many ways, we also have to be the talent, and then we also have to advocate for ourselves. And that can be a lot of pressure on talent. That can be a lot of pressure on camera hosts, is having to constantly advocate for yourself. And so I would say that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is advocating for a story, or advocating for or just trying to get people to like watch the stories or understand why it's important. So I would say that's definitely, those challenges. You just know that there's always going to be a fight. It's not easy for Black women. There's preconceived notions and thoughts and views before you even walk into a room. Um, I tell people all the time, it's just like, you want to make sure that you're very kind to people with everyone that you meet, because it's, people can say, oh, she was talking to me this way, this gives aggressive, like little things like that. Right. So I think that just in the industry, I wouldn't say it's the Jazz in general. I would say just in the sports industry, as a woman, as a professional, just as a professional woman working, it's not easy. As a professional Black woman working, there are going to be challenges that you face, and advocating for yourself is one of them, and being confident in that. And I'm so grateful for my experience at Howard, because it taught me that. It taught me that when people are giving me a hard time, just know that like that's what comes with it. I think I looked at in Beyonce's Renaissance film, one thing that I like emotionally just like felt and was connected to was when she talked about like, as a Black woman, it's just so many times people just try to make it so hard. It's like, how can I make it so hard that she wants to give up? And it's like, you kind of have to have that mindset that you are so good at what you do that they want you to give up, and you can't let up. You have to be two steps smarter, and you have to be smarter. And so that's probably the biggest thing.
Wonderful.
Hair is
As
like
some,
on my nose. I'm like, ugh.
ooh, you're fine. You're fine. As someone who has achieved just notable success, what advice would you? As someone who has achieved notable success like yourself, Niall, what advice would you give to aspiring journalists and digital content creators in general, just from your perspective and just from your own walk at this time?
I think you gotta love what you do. Love the story that you're telling. Believe in the story that you're telling. The views, the clicks, yeah, like metrics are important, but at the end of the day, it's you. If you don't get any views on it, you want to know that you walked away and you told a great story. So just really be passionate about every story that you tell, and really take the time to make sure that it's good. That's my big thing, is just to make sure. I just had a recent piece come out that I'm so incredibly proud of. I forgot about this one, but like Lucia Harris, she was the first woman officially drafted by an NBA team, a Black woman back in 1977. Nobody knew that story.
Yep.
And I'm just like, how does no one know it? And she was drafted by the Jazz, and it was the Oscar winning film. And I really wanted to tell the story. I really wanted to tell the story. When I got to the Jazz, I was like on my list of stories that I wanted to tell. And we put out this story, and she passed away, unfortunately, but we were able to bring her daughters in to like continue their mom's legacy. And that was just a complete honor. And so that was a story that I was passionate about. And it took, you know, it was a lot of moving parts, people involved, that I'm so incredibly grateful for. But it was like, I was passionate about this, and I wanted to make sure that we got it out. I'm so grateful for that. So just be passionate, love the story that you're telling, believe in the story that you're telling, and you don't have to get, um, you don't have to hear from others on how great something is. Once you believe in it and you know that it's great, you don't need to hear from anybody else.
That's for sure. And given that the name of this show, this podcast is called Queen's Court Conversations, and I typically have my female co-host do this with me also as well, many times in person and virtual. In
Mhm.
fact, we wanted to do this with you during Sundance in person, but we weren't able to do so, unfortunately, because we had to cut our trip short. But just in general, now, how do you define being a queen, and how does that definition influence your work and your personal life?
Ugh, I love that question. Queen is being confident in who you are. Queen is being a leader. Queen is also being able to follow, like when you need to follow, that's okay too. But a queen is someone that is kind, that is gracious. Um, you talk about like how I apply it to my work. It's someone that's passionate. So a queen might be passionate about, if we think about a queen that's like in the royal theme or the royal aspect of what a queen is, you think about someone that's passionate to her subjects. Is that what it is? But I think for me, it's like I'm passionate about their work. So I am a queen because I am confident. I love what I do. I love the stories that I tell. I love the lives that I'm able to touch. And so that's what I think a queen is. And I love it. I love the title.
That's great. Glad you do. Can you share how you use your platform to empower others, especially women and other marginalized just folks in the Salt Lake City community, or even just back home or anywhere else in your journey?
I think any of the stories that I tell, especially the ones where I go kind of like deep into player stories, like I want people at the end of the day to see them as humans. And so when I'm able to tell those stories of like, we're going back home and we talk about like, and the recent one we had with Taylin, we talked about like, she's like, his mom talked about just how much of a historian he is of the game. And that's what you need, right? Like when you're looking at like why I want to be a doctor. Okay, like what do you need? What does it take to be a doctor? What research do I need to be doing? And so finding stories like that, I love that people can watch it and you don't have to be a basketball player, but you can take notes of what Talon did to get there. So he was constantly doing the research on knowing who basketball players were that most people in his age group didn't even have to know. But he's doing that research because he knew that that's where he wanted to go, and he was taking those notes and applying them, and that's where it got him to where he is. And so I think that's one way that I can inspire young women. I also think women can, or yeah, just like women, boys, girls, all of that. They can be inspired by just the fact that like my journey wasn't easy. There's some hardships, and I try to be as open and candid. When people reach out to me on social media, I may not be the quickest to respond, but I do respond. And it's like, yo, I'm like, I'm just so busy and just understand
Yeah.
that this is not intentional. Understand
Oh,
that
yeah.
I overlook things and it's an oversight, but just please allow me to know that is not intentional and that is not what I intended. And so, yeah, try to respond and encourage people, let them know, keep going. We're gonna keep walking through these doors and busting these doors down so that others can get in, opportunities and jobs can be created so that we can all succeed. And so I try to do that with my work.
That's great. And Niall, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing women today, and what steps you think we can take to overcome them?
I mean, there's a lot of challenges that we face. I can speak towards my experience as a Black woman. It's not easy. Because I think about like just recently, like with Angel Reese, like when she talked about like her experience,
Yep.
that was something that I like definitely felt to my core because as someone that's now 7 years in the game, 7 years working in professional sports, and knowing how not easy how it was so hard, and just hoping that okay, like maybe I'm making it easier for the next generation than just hearing that she's still facing a lot of those things. I told you the standards are so hard. It's very like it's a thin line, right? And we have to be careful about the line that we tote because people will consider us the villain. People will just there's perceptions that people perceive. One bad encounter can affect how people view you for the rest of your life and in your career. And so that's probably one of the toughest things is just knowing that like unfortunately people are going to have preconceived notions and judgments and you can't let that affect you, but it does because we're normal. And so I think that's probably one of the bigger things.
What do you think of the state of women's sports today? Matter of fact, I don't even just mean today, just right now. I mean, this whole past week, including tonight, it's just you're seeing a culmination of what the past year has brought, especially ever since that national championship game with LSU and Iowa just last year. And just that one hand gesture, it seems as though it just really just put women's sports on the map, at least for the mainstream. Of course, it's been a great game, and I certainly love watching it a little more than men even admittedly, and especially in the course of the past year or just even the last couple of years for someone who's more of a sports hardo. in general. And it definitely, the media attention hasn't been there. And then sometimes the TV deals are quite frankly a joke. But just right now at this moment, Nayo, especially given that you work in the pro sports space and everything, and as a woman, what do you think of the state of women's sports as of April 5th, 2024?
Well, I say that this is a moment. But then when you actually like kind of just do the research of the people that came before, like when I brought up Lucia Harris, the research of who this lady was that so many people knew, I call an unsung hero. And people are still learning about her story. And so I definitely am grateful for this moment. I'm definitely grateful that people are tuning in. I think it was like 12.5 million people watched that game with Angel Reese or just all four games actually. So like seeing the Juju walk in, seeing the Paige Becker, seeing Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, uh, seeing Angel Reese grace the cover of Vogue to announce that she's going out for the WNBA draft. So I'm grateful for this moment. I'm grateful that it's getting the views, that everyone's watching, that they're entertaining, that these girls are delivering to. They came to that stage and delivered. Like I think Angel had 20 rebounds, and then of course, like Caitlin Clark just went off. Like sis just went off, and she's so talented. And everyone's like, we want to see Caitlin Clark against Steph Curry, and like similar to like what we saw. With Sabrina and
At the
Steph in the
All-Star
All
game, yeah,
Star
All-Star
at the
weekend.
All Star game back in February. So I'm just appreciating this moment. I'm loving that everyone's tuning in. I'm loving that everyone's supporting, and I'm loving that people are making it a thing. Like, let's go to the bar and watch these women's sports, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, that's the thing. People are going to bars now
Yeah,
to watch women's
watch
games. Like,
the women.
the women, and just think about that. If you really just take a step back, you had to honestly, one has to honestly ask themselves, have have I done this before? Because like
Yeah.
we're quick, we do it for the men's sports without even batting an eye. But now that we're doing it, I mean, I've even seen some social media articles about how this one entrepreneur opened up a restaurant and bar exclusively showing women's sports, and
Hey,
that's,
I love it.
yeah, I think it's in San Francisco. I have to send you that link later on if I
Send
can
it to
find.
me. I'm going to San Francisco next week, so send it to me.
Oh, okay, will do for sure. Is there a historical figure, or contemporary, and all that that embodies the essence of a queen to you, Niall? And if so, who and why? I think I know the answer, but if you could just say so again.
Oh, do I gotta say Lucia again? I think I got to because she's known as the queen of basketball. So I have to say that. Lucia Harris, queen of basketball. May God rest her soul. May we continue to share her legacy. Um, yeah, I just encourage everyone to watch her because at the end of the day, it's like she what we talk about in this piece is, she was diagnosed with bipolar 2, I believe. And that's something that she battled with, but she opened up about it right before her passing. She passed from an unexpected heart attack. But, that was something that her kids had to see growing up. And they talked about what that was like. And we see that in the piece, but like mental health and her, during a time when mental health, people weren't talking about it. They weren't talking about it at all. But she chose to, open up about her struggles and just admit, like, hey, I'm not perfect. And so just all areas. She was the first woman to score a basket in the Olympics back in 1976 when women's basketball was finally allowed there. And that's back in 1976. She
Yeah,
has a silver medal. She was the first Black woman to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Like it just goes on and on and on. So many accolades, so many great things. So I definitely have to give it to the queen of basketball, Lucy Harris.
for sure. And just on that note, who are your mentors, just
Ooh.
personally and professionally?
Natasha Alford, who's at the Grio, who's like just absolutely amazing. She has a book called America Negra that just came out. I wish I need to put it on my uh, bookshelf. Give a huge shout out to
That's
Carrie Champion, whose journey was just just undeniable. Started at the Tennis Channel, ended up at ESPN, and she's absolutely amazing. And so I would definitely say those two.
that's great. Is there a social cause or issue that you care deeply about? And if so, what steps are you doing
Ooh.
basically to support it?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Why am I blanking? Um, Well, I work with a lot of the youth out here in Utah. So I work with a foundation called Curly Me. So I just want to give them a shout out, which is a foundation in Utah that's dedicated to a big part of Utah or something about you'll notice about Utah culture is transracial adoption. And so basically it's Black kids being adopted by white families. And so Curly Me is an organization started by a Black woman from Newark, not Newark, but she's from Jersey, New Jersey. I don't know where though in Jersey. I don't want to mess up. But she's from Jersey and she came out here to Utah and now she's investing and starting this foundation to really be able to, these girls can learn, these girls' parents can learn, like, how can I do my daughter's hair? Where can I send my daughter to school? Introducing the HBCUs, just having those conversations. So huge shout out to Curly Me. Um, there was something else that I was thinking about that I just literally left my mind. So I'm just gonna leave it there.
It's all good. It's all good for sure. Can you share a fear?
Oh, HBCUs. Anything about HBCUs, any about investing, the Jazz, have an internship with Howard interns where we bring them in every summer, and that's like a huge part. I try to like stay involved and invest into the young kids that come out to Utah. So HBCUs for sure.
Got it. And can you share a fear that you've had to overcome that or that you're currently working through? I mean, obviously you deal with a whole lot. So if you're willing to just kind of share that with us, because I certainly see you as one who's able to overcome a whole lot. And you really do look like, at least to me, a superwoman in real life. So if you can just dispel anything that you're overcoming currently or have overcome.
I think fear of rejection is probably a big thing that I haven't overcome. I think that's gonna always come naturally, but just knowing that, like, when one door closes, another door will open, and we say that, and I say it so easily off the tongue, but, like, at the end of the day, like, I get nervous when I'm doing a pitch. I'm like, "I'm about to get rejected," and, like, just little things like that, or so rejection is something that I'm constantly working and working through. We call it, uh, the word that I was looking for, imposter syndrome. So we call it imposter syndrome. That could sometimes like creep into your head where it's like, I'm not good enough, or I shouldn't be here, or um, this is not for me. And at the end of the day, it's like you can't let those thoughts creep into your head. And so I'm constantly working through those evil little thoughts, that little devil that I tries to get on my shoulder to tell me that I'm not good enough, or tell me that whatever. Like, don't try that because you're gonna get rejected, and not living in that, and living in the truth, and living in knowing that I have practiced and prepared for this moment.
Got it. So what's your spirit animal? What animal do you feel like you can relate to the most, and why does it
Ah,
connect with you?
animal. Huh. Um, it's funny, it's like I'm not a big animal person. Um, I would say what animal? Some animals that bring me peace are like horses. I think they're great. I love
That's good.
horses. I
That's
love
good.
riding them. I think they're fun. I think they're bosses. I think they demand a stallion. I'm a stallion.
That works.
Tall,
That works.
elegant, and beautiful.
That works. That works. What is if you could have lunch with your 17-year-old self, what would
Ah.
you say to her?
Um, Girl, this gonna be a wild ride. You're gonna end up in places that you never thought you would be in,
That's
and with
good.
people that you never thought you would be with.
That's good. And where do you see yourself in the next 1 to 2 years or 3 to 5 years, or where would you like to be?
I say 3 to 5 years. I mean, I see myself, yeah, I see myself as a household name. I see myself one day you might be watching ABC and I might be a reporter on ABC. Next thing you know, I might be introducing um album of the year at the Grammys. I can just be doing it all. Maybe not album of
I
the
can
year
see
because I think
that.
we just had one album of the year, but like presenting an award at the Grammys, at People Choice Awards, like doing all of that, maybe hosting it and sitting down with some of your favorite celebrities, favorite athletes, all of them. So I see myself like all over your TV, on streaming platforms, having my own show on a streaming platform, all of that within 5 years.
Wow, I can certainly say that I can see that happening for sure. Um, but yeah, what gems do you have to drop just for anyone out there who wants to be where you are or someplace similar? What do you have to say to them? What gems
Um,
do you have to drop?
Just prepare. Practice equals preparation was something that I heard shortly before I got this next job, was just putting in those hours. People talk about those 10,000 hours. So constantly be practicing and preparing for that moment, because when that moment comes, it is quick. So just be ready, because when someone says, I want you to do this, you need to be ready so you can do it.
That's perfect. And appreciate all this conversation here, Nayo. This certainly sums it up. You have a great career going on right now, and I think you're going to do a whole lot more. So definitely will hope we can connect, stay connected, stay in touch, and we can connect further in person down the road and such, especially if you're in the DMV or in such. Because
Yeah,
I'm
I'll be back home soon.
okay, cool. We'll make it happen for sure. So tell folks who are watching this how they can follow you and stay in touch with you or get in touch with you.
Okay, well, you can follow me on Instagram at Nayo_Campbell. Twitter, it's Nayo Campbell. LinkedIn, of course, is Nayo Campbell. Everything is Nayo Campbell. So just follow me there.
Got it. Well, thank you, Miss Nayo Campbell, for joining Queen Square Conversations. And this will be up later on today. And thank you again, Niall.
Thank you so much.